Welcome back to the BTN TV Studio. My name's Andy Hoskins and I'm editor of Business Travel News Europe. Joining me now is Paul Deere, Vice President of Concur Travel. Maybe first we can talk a little bit about general business travel sentiment and demand. It's been quite an unusual first half of the year with some geopolitical events, conflict. There's been a lot going on. How is that affecting demand?
Demand has been fairly strong, I'll be honest with you. It's fairly constant. I think what we are seeing, though, is because now there's still delays to Boeing and Airbus delivering the planes. So we've seen sort of the restraint in the capacity. Demand is increasing still. So you've seen average ticket prices growing. So from a volume point of view, we've seen growth. But as I say, from a transactional point of view, it's fairly flat still.
Would you like to try and speculate what you're going to see in the second half of the year?
Who can second guess the world today? We've got more and more products coming through. We're seeing a lot of sort of NDC content coming through, and that's going to get more prevalent in Q2, in the second half of the year. We've got more and more rail coming into the platform, which predominantly has always been leaked out into the marketplace. People buying at stations or not having the ability to buy a ticket before you leave the country. Inbound travel, that's very, it happens in the industry today. Now, bringing those in, we will actually see an increase in our transaction count, I'm sure fairly significant in half two as it continues to push forward.
Yeah, and what's behind that sort of rise in rail demand? Is it the sustainability agenda?
There's a number of things, I think, but we surveyed 600 CFOs, and they're saying that they're expecting that their travel budgets to slightly increase over the next 12 months, but not to an optimal stage where they know where the key ROI is. So they can't expand it that much. So therefore, how can they do more with less? Short-haul air travel, for example, if you can replace that with rail, costs are lower in Europe. Sustainability is better, which CFOs have to report as part of the financial accounts now. So there's definitely a push towards that. But equally, you yourself, Andy, broke the news about the carbon budgeting that's coming into the Concur products. Now, if I can travel 6 times by rail but only once or twice by air, I now have to make a conscious decision about my ROI. And every time I travel, if I can close a deal, I'm going to take the 6 times going by rail. Carbon budgeting, cost control, and sustainability are the 3 key factors why rail's going to increase.
That carbon budgeting in the booking tool is when I sort of heard about it, and that's why I picked it out. I thought it was quite a big moment, I suppose, in travel management.
It is, and it's a necessity. And the trouble is, it's now, how do you trade between the two? Is it just financial? Is it just carbon? Is it a mixture of both? But again, it's a decision making. So I think we just need to be a little bit sort of step one back. An online booking tool is there as a decision point. We don't know how full the plane's going to be. So we can't tell you accurately the CO2, but we can give you a good estimate based upon this metric and this metric, powered by our friends at Thrust Carbon. But bearing that in mind, you'll only ever get true carbon reporting out of expense. 60% of your carbon reporting is in expense. Your mileage, your traffic, your Ubers, your restaurant meals, your et cetera, et cetera. So again, we're seeing that sort of sustainability piece driving. And so therefore, carbon budgeting is just a natural progression. How it's managed? Do you start seeing internal trading within a company? Finance not allowed to travel, but sales are because they can maximise the ROI.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see some trends going in that direction, but we'll wait to see.
Yeah, there is one company I've spoken to who is doing exactly that, trading carbon budgets within their company, and they've developed a piece of technology to facilitate it. Exactly. And I found it really interesting. I moderated a session earlier this morning.
It was very good, by the way.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah,
okay, thank you. We had 3 fantastic panellists, all professional services companies. And at one point I asked them, can you see a point in the future when carbon is the currency that companies are looking at rather than financial budgets? And there's a very long pause. And none of them really wanted to commit to it, but the consensus was at some point it might happen.
See, then you go back to the survey we've done and say, for the first time ever, we've taken in CFOs. Okay. And CFOs have a very different perspective to a travel manager to a traveller. And we surveyed 3,750 travellers and 600 travel managers, but these 600 CFOs have they are cost and control. But they've also got to put their name to the sustainability, the CO2 reporting. They've also got to put in the financial accounts, this is what we're doing to reduce our footprint. They've committed to net zero or whatever timescale but predominantly a lot of the global customers have come out with those statements. What are they supposed to do? They can't stop travelling because actually it restricts the business and it restricts trade. And you want your salespeople out there in front of people closing deals. So how do you move? And I think it's not ever going to be just carbon, but you're still going to have cost and control, but carbon's going to be a very close second. And I think it's the balancing act between the two will be, the ones that get that right will be the ones that you'll see growth in their companies.
So let's talk a little bit more about the survey. I did pick a couple of things out. Willingness to travel. There seem to be some safety concerns among travellers. I suppose that's only natural given everything that's going on in the world right now.
90% of people said that they would question travelling for these reasons. One, if you've travelled too much, you burn out. 36% of people said, if I've travelled week in, week out, I do need a break occasionally, so I might turn down travel. If I'm going to somewhere where there's hostilities or close to hostilities, and certainly I think current circumstances would apply to that. Yes, of course I'd question my travel, and I think 40% of people said that as well. So you've got to understand that business travel is not a perk; it's a necessity. 89% of the people surveyed says it's a necessity for them to travel for their job. So how do you still have to control your own travel patterns. You still have to have the ability to say, I don't feel comfortable with that. In fact, interestingly, we've seen some through the survey results that you've seen travellers now prepared to pay a little bit extra for their own comfort on their travel.
I did see that,
I'm sure, well, there you go. It's coming out of their own pocket. So actually, I might go indirect. That's what my company policy is. Well, actually, I'm prepared to pay a little bit more and go direct. I might sit in economy, but I might pay a little bit more and go premium economy, and I'll cover that. I don't necessarily want to stay in a 3-star hotel. I'm going to stay in 4, but I'll cover the difference. And you can see that from, actually, interestingly, it's the younger members of the travel community. They're travelling now for experiences as well as business travel.
87% are reporting some form of cutback.
So the cutback from, I'm allowed to fly first class, I can only fly business class, depending if you're at this end of the scale.
Yeah.
I can now, I can't fly a legacy carrier. I must fly a low-cost carrier. What's our job? And from an online booking tool point perspective, we have to get as much content into the product as possible, so for every demographic of customer, they can choose what they want. If they want to book by mobile, we've got mobile parity. If they want to book on the website, on our application on desktop, they can do so. If they want a low-cost carrier, Ryanair is a great example, they can book direct connect through us. If they want European rail, we can do. Our job isn't necessarily to tell them what to do, it's to give them the ability to choose where they sit in that organisation. Yeah. And therefore we're seeing, maybe sales travelling one way, internal meetings travelling another way. It's all manageable, but track your data. Make sure your expenses are clean, so therefore you can track your carbon emissions, and you work within the budgets that you're set. And so, as I say, we're a smorgasbord of content.
Any other sort of headline findings from the survey you'd like to draw our attention to?
Well, no, as I said, I think the interesting fact is people are starting to prepare to pay a little bit more for their own personal travel. But one of the findings actually was quite interesting. We did have a conversation about this. 87% of the travellers actually said that they travelled differently when somebody else was paying, when it was business travel.
I'd be among that 87%,
yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. So, they'd travel business class when actually in personal life they'd fly economy. They'd go to a slightly better restaurant rather than a McDonald's. There's ways to travel which you're comfortable with in your personal life that if you translated that into your business life, you could extend the budgets. And so knowing that you're doing it, knowing that there's budget constraints, but also having KPIs to deliver sales, you can manage all of that and you can get more from your travel today if it's managed in the right way and if you travel like you would do in a consumer world. Our job is there not to tell people what to do, it's just to provide those options. But sensible travellers can stretch their budgets to do maybe either longer trips or more trips to meet those KPIs of growth and sales.
Thank you very much for sharing some insights there and for joining us in the BTN TV studio.
Appreciate it as always, Andy. Thank you.